Constantine Parkinson, a 15-year-old, was one of the canal workers. Like many, he might have lied about his age, but on July 16, 1913, a day he would never forget, he lost his leg. His left heel was crushed, but when the poor boy went to his grandmother for some aid, the response from the canal's chief engineer, George Goethals, was inhumane. He said there was no law to give compensation when workers lose their limbs. As heart-wrenching as this sounds, this was the reality of the greatest infrastructure project the world had ever seen. The canal cost about $375 million back then, and now it seems to be a waste of money and lives. Last year, the canal was in big trouble. It didn't get enough rain, only 2/3 of what was expected, leading to very low water levels, resulting in ships paying thousands of dollars to cross the Panama Canal. And this is not even the only threat they're facing. Another concern looms as a potential rival to the Panama Canal emerged in Mexico in 2020. The Mexican rail is more than 1,000 kilometers long, and the passenger train takes only about 9 hours, which is quicker than the Panama Canal. As of now, the passenger train is only finished and is open to the general public, but the growth would be unparalleled considering the other two trains are to be completed by the end of 2024. Before we dive deeper into the intricate story of the Panama Canal, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell to stay updated. With a length of over 130 football fields, imagine digging a trench 10 stories deep, more than 90 meters wide, in the heat of 30 degrees Celsius. If this sounds unbelievable, wait till you hear more shocking facts. Facts that were buried and overshadowed by the beauty of the construction. It was a crucial project because Panama is located on the Isthmus of Panama, connecting North and South America. It is of huge importance because back in 1914, ships used to sail through the Strait of Magellan. It was dangerous since the Strait of Magellan sometimes gets stormy. Another alternative to this was the Northwest Passage, which sits at the top of America. And this also wasn't a realistic option since it used to be clogged by ice for most of the year, making it impossible to navigate for the ships. That is why the USA had to take up this construction. The US promised to do it differently, and so they did. Their aggressive ways started with disciplining the landscape by draining swamps and killing mosquitoes. But this was just the beginning. The canal's construction and operation have had significant effects on the surrounding ecosystems. Whole villages and forests were flooded, and a whole freaking railway that was constructed had to be relocated. If this wasn't difficult, they had to move 100 million cubic meters of dirt. To put into perspective, when accumulated, it can be a man-made mountain, which can be almost 2 times taller than the Empire State Building. The situation of the contract workers from the Caribbean employed for this million-dollar project was unfortunately not even better. They lived in horrifying conditions. In simple words, it's enduring Jim Crow-like regime, bad food, extremely long working days just to get underpaid. Not to forget, they all lived in constant danger. Now, let's look at some stats. Isthmian Canal Commission, which was in charge of canal-contracted New York manufacturer A.A. Marks to supply artificial limbs to men injured while on duty. This just proves how extreme the situation was for the workers. By 1912, A.A. Marks had supplied more than 200 artificial limbs despite all of these restrictions. If you want to hear it from the survivors, filmmaker Roman Foster Diggers in 1984 featuring the stories of what it was like to dig through the spiny backbone of Panama. After the horrific building strategy, the canal was opened in 1914. After 10 years of construction, it fulfilled a vision of connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans that had tempted people for centuries but had long seemed impossible. You see, the Panama Canal, despite its dark history, is vital in global trade. The Panama Canal handles about 3% of the world's maritime trade and about 46% of containers moving from Northeast Asia to the US East Coast. Now, this is struggling due to a few key factors. One major issue is undoubtedly climate change. The Panama Canal has now become so congested, it's gotten to a point that forced a Japanese ship owner, Eneos Group, to pay nearly $4 million to skip to the front of the line. If you, even for a second, think this big drop in shop traffic might have led to a financial crunch for the canal, you're totally wrong. The irony of this is that this hasn't influenced the finances of the canal at all. The Panama Canal held auctions for those wishing to jump to the front line. Several shipping companies were willing to pay large sums like Eneos Group and Avance Gas. The latter paid around $400,000 each for both auction and as a regular toll-free. If we look at these figures, despite the drop of 1.5% in the tonnage shipped through the canal, its revenue raised everyone's eyebrows when it rose to 15%, which is nearly $5 billion. However, the Panama Canal declined to disclose the amount earned through auctions. But there is more than what meets the eye. The Panama Canal is also facing stiff competition from other routes like the Suez Canal, which is a far longer voyage that takes more fuel, but with the current high Panama Canal prices, companies that want to travel from Asia to the east coast of the US are beginning to show interest in other alternatives. Pre-drought, the canal could allow 38 vessels a day, which has now dropped to 24 vessels a day. So, can the Panama Canal save itself? Embroiled in a crisis that's disrupting global trade, how can Panama get through this? The canal's importance in global trade cannot be overlooked. About $270 billion worth of cargo passes along the Panama Canal every year. Just to avoid delays, unfortunately, many ships have to take detours this year. This new interest of ships towards the interoceanic corridor in southern Mexico is evident. It's going to be 1,000 kilometers long, including the 3 main railway lines. López Obrador is very optimistic about this project and is also planning to build a series of industrial parks along the railway. This could be a huge transformative project for the Mexican government and is expected to attract $50 billion of international investment. As of now, the passenger railway is finished, and the other 2 are being done by the end of 2024. But a special attention is given to cargo ships transportation since they are adding a special feature, which is a total retail of the ports at both ends of the train. Also, in addition to this, a giant breakwater is to be constructed at the port of Salina Cruz. This will likely shelter the harbour since it will consist of thousands of tons of rocks. Most importantly, giant rock walls are to be constructed to tackle the problems of storms and waves that are a huge risk to cargo ships. This rival to the Panama Canal can overtake and crumble the 100-year-old legacy of the canal. This brings us to question if there is any future for the Panama Canal. Well, they have invested a significant amount of money in sustainability projects. The drought, for example, forced them to introduce water-saving measures like water recycling. Water from the lake is required to operate the canal's locks. Each ship that passes through the locks uses around 50 million gallons of water. So they have found a way to reuse water from one lock chamber to another, which is called cross-filling. This method saves the equivalent of 6 daily crossings. Sounds great, but does more harm than good. That is because Lake Gatun has an artificial freshwater lake within the Panama Canal that's completely enclosed by locks. These locks act as a barrier, preventing marine animals from moving to the opposite side of the Caribbean Sea and Eastern Pacific. Also, this reused water gets saltier and infiltrates Lake Gatun. One major thing to note is that Panama Canal Authority also supplies drinking water for half of the country's population, including the capital, Panama City. So, majorly, this water conservation method comes at a cost of marine life and drinking water supplies. But are solutions like this sustainable enough? That I will leave you, just for now. If you found this video informative, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fascinating insights. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, stay curious